Hi, it's Wednesday. That means it's time for another video edition of Widower Wednesday. I'm Abel Keogh, author of the book Dating a Widower, and today we're going to answer an email from a woman whose widower won't stop comparing her to the late wife. The email, which I share with permission of the author, goes like this. It goes, Abel, for the last 6 months I've been dating a widower. This is a new experience for me. Things were great at the beginning, but it seems like the last 3 months, the widower is always mentioning how the late wife did things. For example, if we go out to eat, he mentions what the late wife would order. If we're watching TV, he mentions what kind of shows the late wife liked. If I talk about something, he always brings it back to the late wife. At least he's not saying anything about her in the bedroom, but that could change. And there's like a little frowny face there. I don't know if his words are intentional or not, but I feel like I'm subtly being compared to the late wife and I can't measure up. I've pointed it out a couple times and it gets better for 2 or 3 days and he's back at it. What can I do to stop the widower from comparing me to the late wife? Great question, and thank you for letting me share this email with all the viewers here. So let me just talk about comparisons for a second. Comparisons, in a general sense, are normal for anybody, not just widowers. If you've been in if you've been in a long-term relationship and you get together with someone else, it's normal to mentally compare them, right? So, like when I was dating Julie, I'd been married to Krista for 3 years. We had dated for several years before that, so she was kind of the big part of my life, and I couldn't help but make comparisons, just that Julie did things differently. Now, in my mind, they weren't that Julie did things better or worse, they were that things are different. And so it's normal to mentally make comparisons, and I'm sure if you think about it, if you've been in serious relationships before, everybody does comparisons because it's part of the adjustment process. Well, this is how I'm not used to doing things, or this is how I'm not used to things being done, and you kind of mentally adjust to it and go on. What's not okay is when the verbal comparisons come out. So, again, I don't know if he's really subtly. I don't think it's like a direct comparison, but it does sound like he's like you're watching TV and he's like, oh, hey, the late wife liked this show or this actor, or we watched this movie with the late wife. Maybe not a direct comparison, like, well, Karen used to do things this way, or Karen used to do things that way. But I get what you're saying. It is kind of a subtle comparison, and nobody really wants to hear that. So whether you've got somebody who's subtly comparing you verbally, or someone's saying, well, I'm not used to doing it this way, or that's not the way so and so did it. Whatever it is, those kind of verbal comparisons are not good. And it sounds like you tried to handle it, but maybe it just didn't work out quite right. So let me give you a way to handle it that I think will work 99.9% of the time. And if you do it right, I think it'll work 100% of the time. So it's really about how you approach and frame it. So let me tell you a story. When Julie and I were first married, every once in a while, she would compare me to her dad. And I know you were thinking like, oh, I used to compare Julie to Krista, and I got stories about that too. But this ties into how you solve the problem. And I don't think, again, Julie would just mention something about maybe the way her dad would do things, or my dad would handle it this way. And when she would make those comparisons, I'd get really mad inside. I'm like, I'm not your dad, right? I'm not your dad. And I'm glad your dad did things that way, but I'm not your dad, And by the way, my father-in-law is a great guy. I love him. This isn't anything against my a father-in-law or anything. But again, this was early in our marriage, and Julie didn't do it often, but I think it was the same kind of thing, right? Where Julie's this is kind of, Julie hasn't been married before, so I'm doing things, and maybe she's just kind of used to the way her dad would do things growing up, and it's different, and, my dad did things this way, and, I'm not your dad. But anyway, one day I came up with a creative way to solve it, and I want you to say that after I've done this, it's never been an issue in our relationship ever again. And so the next time Julie again, I don't think Julie was doing this intentionally. She wasn't doing it to hurt things. And I think you should give the same benefit of the doubt to the widower you're dating, by the way. But the next time Julie made a comparison to me and her dad, I just kind of looked at her and said, I tried to say this in a very humorous kind of light way, so she wouldn't, so it would be taken better. But I said, next time you compare me to your dad, I'm going to make a comparison to you and Krista. And I just kind of let that hang there. And I think, it took Julie a second, but then I think the light bulb kind of went on. It's just like, oh, I see what I'm doing. I don't want to be compared. It would hurt me. Or there's been times, and I admit it. There were times that I kind of compared Julie to Krista verbally, and obviously she didn't like that. So the light bulb kind of came on and said, "Oh, I see your point. I see what you're doing," and it hasn't been an issue in our relationship since. She hasn't compared me to her dad. I haven't compared her to Krista, and life's been great. We've been married for what is it, going on 18 years here. So I think if you're going to, I suggest you do that, but you have to frame it in the right way. You can't get mad at somebody and yell at them and say, well, if you do that, I'm going to compare you to so and so, my ex-husband or an ex-boyfriend or whoever, right? But I think if you just kind of look at them and smile and say, I love you, but I really don't appreciate it when you compare me to your late wife, Karen. Next time you make a comparison like that, I'm going to make a comparison to you and my whatever ex-husband, my ex-boyfriend. I don't know. You pick somebody, but you get the idea. And then, if they do it, be prepared to make the comparison. So if they say, well, Karen used to do it this way, you can say, well, guess what? Bob used to do it this way, and you can kind of leave it at that. And I think after a time or two, it'll sink in pretty good with them. But I do guarantee that that no one likes to be compared. It isn't just and by the way, if you feel compared, your feelings are normal. No one likes to be compared. Doesn't matter if you're dating a widower, anybody else. No one likes to be compared to somebody else because we're our own people. We have our own way of doing things. And it's not to say that we're perfect or that the way we're doing things are perfect, but nobody likes to be pointed out that somebody might do things differently or better. There are ways to address that, by the way. If you do want to, have your widower or the person you're dating make some changes. There's ways to do that, but that's a different video. Point is, nobody likes to be compared. I don't like to be compared. Julie doesn't like to be compared. You don't like to be compared. Nobody likes to be compared. So I think if you handle it in the right way, you do it with some humor and a smile, I think that the comparisons will stop. If they don't, if they can't make that adjustment even after you're throwing some comparisons back, probably a sign that that person is not ready for a serious relationship, or at least not ready to open his heart and move on. So anyway, hope that was helpful. If you have other ideas about how to stop people from comparing, leave them in the comments below. Be sure to like the video. Be sure to subscribe. If you have issues in your relationship you want to talk about, go ahead and schedule a relationship coaching session with me. There's a link in the description below. I'm Abel Keogh, author of the book Dating a Widower, and I'll see you next Wednesday.